groups to solve innovation problems, which I guess is kind of how me and Rakesh met. We were lucky enough to work together on a few projects across Asia and Europe. And I guess through some of this work, we got to, I guess, really get a group together, and from that had a lot of different conversations, which led to eventually the life sprint.
So I'm familiar with the life sprint just because I've been following along fairly closely. I have been hearing wild raves from people that have gone through it and that are advocates for it. At its base, what would you say would be the elevator pitch for this process you're calling the life sprint?
It's a little tool to get you unstuck. Using I guess, like the theory that we all know around design thinking and design sprints. It takes that little idea that you've got in your head, but you never action, or that little challenge of what are you going to do next? And we kind of say, well, let's get some people together, let's be strategic and really quickly go about actually changing.
And it's all about taking those baby steps and not really about creating this whole new world or finding a dream job or anything, but just getting unstuck wherever you are now. Because from all the research and experiments that we've been doing, people really experience this in a very intense way. And it's really painful to be stuck and to be frozen in such scenarios.
Do you find that when people come into the life sprint and work with you both, do they have their individual stories, and do you find there's real importance in being able to figure out where that comes from, being able to really truly understand where they are, and does the process kind of accommodate that variation on a theme with different people?
Yeah, totally. I think like that's one of the most fun things about actually guiding people through a life sprint is you get to kind of unwrap some of the real inner passions that people have. So one example, we worked with this woman who works for a large company, and she wanted to get much more into writing, and she'd basically been thinking about this for a long time, so much so that she had a browser open on her website, a website open on her browser, looking to press purchase on a 9-month writing course. But she had this deep fear that she'd be overburdened and actually get burnt out to be able to do that with her work. And so that was really cool because I guess highlighting what Rakesh said about unlocking the small things, we kind of looked at, well, how can you overcome this fear of being burnt out and actually make sure that you don't get burnt out to enable you to do the thing that you already knew you wanted to do, which is this writing course. So I guess that's an example of the types of things.
And before we kind of get into a presentation that you have on the concept, would you say overall that the life sprint is a way of jump-starting the conversation about how to get unstuck? Like, is it the first entry into like maybe a more longer conversation about it? Or is this something where someone can go through this process and take away something valuable that they can kind of on their own merit kind of figure out what to do?
Well, I'd say it's a little bit of both, right? So here, I can only think of, so a couple of weeks back, Matt actually tried to put this together in a diagram of sorts. So if you take our entire life, there are quite a few common spots where we get unstuck, you know. So for example, we get stuck right before or after we go to university. We get stuck when we're, you know, in our careers, or we get stuck mid or late career. And these are like, sort of, you can imagine them to be like this sort of wave. All the peaks that you see are probably the points where you really get stuck. And so you can imagine this even to be like a process where you come in at each of these points and say, okay, I just need a life sprint. I know that I'm stuck. It happens to most people. And rather than going through the pain, I'm just going to get unstuck and keep moving, get that momentum.
Got it. Okay, so let's get right into it. This is going to be my first time sharing in Zoom webinar. I've done it all the time in Zoom, but I'm assuming it's the same thing. So I think if in Zoom, you should be able to share something. Let me know if you have the ability to do so.
So it's telling me I can share. I don't see Keynote as an option here.
Should give you an option to actually share an application or your desktop, and then you can basically like showcase and browse from there. Okay,
so share portion of screen. Maybe this one?
Give it a shot.
Okay.
Roll the dice, see what happens.
Okay. Let's see.
Hey, there's Zoom.
There's Zoom, of course. Let's see. Files there. Maybe you just need to get it into this. Yeah, do you see that?
I do. It looks a little large from my standpoint, but maybe it's because it's just my own screen. But
how's this?
That's going to be in a small frame. So you make that full screen. Or if you make the frame the size of that.
By the way, anybody in chat or in YouTube that knows Zoom very well, please post up and let us know what we're doing wrong. I think I can see it pretty much there. I just want to make, yeah, it seems like it's scrolling like left to right. Bring it down a little bit more. I think you have probably like, keep going. You're almost there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's,
there you go. I think we're good.
Sweet, perfect. So I guess that's where we start. Get unstuck. Really the core of whatever we're trying to build here. And to come from the angle of career pathways, planning your career and navigating it can be really tough. And this is something most people identify. So a couple of problem statements there. I'm kind of stuck thinking about my career, I've plateaued, there are too many options. Most jobs of the future don't even exist now.
And just stopping on that, I think this is where we kind of entered the whole project. We were talking to a lot of our friends at the time, and everyone was kind of saying this stuff and really kind of having issues going, well, how do we solve this problem? So I guess that's an entry point into it.
And on a similar note, if you look at workplace issues, figuring them out can also be quite stressful. Even in the presence of traditional structures like an HR manager or HR team, it can still be a bit awkward to talk about certain interesting or important things. So stuff like, I'm not sure my manager is taking my ideas seriously. How do you actually present it in such a way that you get taken seriously? Or how do I work with maybe a jealous colleague? Or you yourself feeling that I deserve to lead that project, but I'm unable to actually do it. So these are some examples that come from the workplace. So what we want to lead to is to say that the life sprint is very strategic, helps you reframe your career or workplace challenges, and to find very pragmatic baby steps that you can take forward.
So just on this one here as well, that's a photo from the very first life sprint that we ran in my apartment here in Berlin, actually, a little over a year ago.
So as Matt says, we didn't start remote right away. We actually started with in-person sprints. And then at some point, we realized that it actually makes more sense to go virtual to reach more people. And as the name says, it's based on the Google Design Sprint method, which is very well known. Some of the best companies in the world use it. And this is what the first sketch looked like. So this is Matt's interpretation of the whole set of activities going from the beginning to the end. So today the live sprint is 3 virtual sessions, about 60 to 90 minutes each, followed by 3 weeks of getting shit done. So you come in with a certain thing that you're stuck with. You really reach the point after the 3rd session where you say, okay, I know the actions that I want to get done. You actually get it done. So that's the whole idea. And what do you get as what are the features, benefits? I'd say you really get to focus on one thing at a time. You work together with like-minded people, so you're not stuck alone. And you find clear actions. And there's a really good confidence boost happening. Since you're doing this together with other people, there's a lot of support. We are there as facilitators, or whichever facilitators is present there. And there's a lot of self-reflection also, which is really built in. And this is mainly what you get from the live sprint. Moving ahead, a couple of codes. We've been working with young professionals mostly. So quite an interesting spectrum of people. There's people who, like someone who wanted to expand into freelance photography, to Matt's example of someone who wanted to just pursue writing, or even others who just wanted to make sure they were doing things that they really enjoy. So we've had a really interesting spectrum of people. And this slide is a response to what would it look like in the future. I think we had a very interesting question from someone who said, hey, what are you guys thinking of long term? we're definitely thinking of the live sprint as something that becomes so integral to everyone's lives that they can just call Alexa and say, hey, I need a live sprint. Or they can interact with how they're doing on the live sprint goals on their Apple Watch, or even in its very simplest physical form. Maybe it's a sort of a product in a candy jar that you can pick up at a co-working space and get started with it right away. So this is our perception of what it could look like in the near future and the distance we want to take it to. So I guess, yeah, that's about it. The live sprint was made in Berlin. We're really proud of that.
Well, we've had, I think, over a dozen countries now where people have participated, which is pretty cool.
And how many participants are we right now?
We're at about 70 people have gone through. So yeah, it's kind of where we're at. But it's also a really fun thing, I guess, about the virtual side, right? Borders don't really matter anymore, and you can really kind of reach people who know this. There's a comment here. Yeah, I think that's
it. And a shout out to partners like Mural and Zoom, without whom we couldn't have gone and done this. So really happy to see Mural and Zoom supporting us with this, and we want to continue that.
Big shout out to Jerome, who just posted the message.
Yeah, I saw that. Jerome's been a regular.
Nice to see you.
Yep. Okay, so maybe it's good to kind of do an entry into when your upcoming life sprints are going to be. Now, I included those in the show notes, but if you could kind of get into what your plan is for kind of showcasing this process for other people to join up and see.
Yeah, I think we're doing 2 parts, right? In October, we're running a couple of sprints.
We've got I think 3 sprints October that you can sign up to. So next week, we've got the evening sessions in European time up and running, and then the week after we've got morning and evening European time, just to try and see what can kind of help people from different time zones involved. So you check out our website, livesprint.me, you can see what's coming up there. But of course, given the fact that you're here for GVDS, we're also going to be doing sessions of that too. So if you don't just sign up for that, make sure you check out the dates. Plenty coming up this month and next. Yeah,
October, November, there's enough opportunity to sign up for live sprints, and especially the GVDS. Again, thanks a lot, Rob. That's really something we're looking forward to see how the GVDS community gets to play around with our live sprint, and we're really excited about getting feedback on that.
So in other words, we're basically communicating in a very subtle way that people have absolutely no excuse, if they have any interest whatsoever, to sign up at some juncture between now and the end of the year, or feel like they haven't given themselves the proper Christmas present.
Yeah, exactly. Get involved. I think we're aim by the end of the year is to get to 100 sprinters that have been through, and that's kind of our first stage where we're really refining it and really making sure that we've got it right around the edges. So be one of those top 100 and help us, I guess, give us feedback and help us with that process as well.
Yeah.
As well.
It's no use feeling stuck going into the new year. The idea is that you're throwing out the shackles come January 1st and like, I'm going to make a ton of promises that about 10% I'm going to keep, but if I get the life sprint going before then, I have a much better chance.
Maybe you sign up just after that and we'll help you actually make them happen.
Yeah.
That could be your New Year's resolution, is doing a life sprint. There you go.
We're actually thinking of like a New Year's sprint also, because this is the time of the year when people are all about resolutions and changing things and stuff like that, right?
I could literally write your marketing and promotions plan for the first quarter next year. Just literally go, okay, position this one, marketing there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beauty. Okay, so let's since we're way ahead of time, but this is fantastic. I think what we're going to do is transition into questions from the audience, both on the YouTube side as well as on the Zoom side for people who registered. And I'll kind of give you some that have come in. Again, I'll check both. So in the absence of one coming in, I'll probably do some follow-up on some details around the process around the life sprint. Some other things, other applications, or other audiences that may go into it. But again, beyond what you've kind of shown in the presentation, I'll kind of iterate on certain particular ones. So I guess a good place to start would be one I just said was, now if you were to project out in terms of the types of audiences that were ideal for the type of design or life sprints that you're offering, how would you project out like some scenarios, like say this person has, and the way to phrase this is, this person has this pain, and based on this pain, this particular process could probably help them immensely.
Cool. Should we stop sharing the screen, by the way?
Yeah, I think we'll just stop the share for a moment.
Yeah.
So the question was around talk through a couple of like groups that we can work with and how we can support them.
Yeah.
Right. So if a person has a particular pain around like getting stuck, something that would be an ideal scenario, how do you see this life sprint process really helping them in a particular way?
Yeah, so one example which I've had quite a few of is, I guess, early to mid-career professionals. So definitely if you're someone who's worked a bit in corporate and you've kind of reached a stage where you're like, well, this isn't quite keeping me going anymore. I need to find something creative. It's a really cool place to start rethinking. What is it that you're missing? Or perhaps there's a project that you've always been wanting to do as well. Another example from someone who joined us was a woman wanted to do her own kind of online virtual workshops around future leadership or future skills leadership. And she joined because she'd had this in her mind for a while. And through this process, she was able to, I guess, focus down further and actually like create a prototype within a month, which meant that she actually ran a session with 12 people, gave her feedback straight away, and super cool. So basically, I guess like with that, it's about really making you actually do the thing that you always think you wanted to do and taking away those excuses and supporting throughout the whole process.
I think another scenario is that we're also seeing is people coming with ideas that they say they want to see it become real. Like really early stage venture ideas. For example, you have someone who's working in a startup and wants to, get her own thing going. So there's a lot of ideas, but where do you start? What's the first step, and how can you just get off the harbor or just get off the runway, and then you can start sailing. You can set course.
So one example from our last one, actually, already just through one woman from Australia actually tuned in, I think at 1 a.m. in Australian time to be part of it, and already she was able to use the group of people who also went through the same sprint to help her prototype her product. So she's actually got like user testing. She was able to send it through, and everyone's kind of able to say, yeah, sure, sign us up, and we can actually help you through that. So.
Interesting. And by the way, Sabrina asks, do you plan to do something in Stuttgart, Germany?
Yes, so we can.
Of course. Sabrina, we're all online, so you can join from anywhere. We're also looking next week, we're going to meet and try to create a German version of the live sprint. Yes. But if you have anything interesting in person, Sabrina, we're more than happy to chat. Just send us a message.
And I think it ties in also, like maybe we could, we're still up for doing in-person stuff because we don't really see the remote thing as replacing it. It's just the easiest way of getting into a live sprint, but we also see value in doing the in-person sessions. So maybe that's something we can talk about also, Sabrina. So yeah, we're always open for that.
It seems like the thing that usually works well is when you meet in person before you actually do the sprint, so they can get an idea of who you are and what you're about. And then when you sync up, then the execution on the virtual side in the life sprint, regular sprint, talent sprint, whatever it is, seems to go over that much better. You just have that connection right off the bat. So if it is possible to do that, kind of know who that person is, then and usually you have a better time of it. But not required, just it kind of helps things.
Yeah, it's always a dance there, right? Between having that in-person thing. For me, the best example is trade fairs. The one reason why trade fairs still haven't died out is because you need that physical presence. You need to look people in the eye, and you need to talk to them. You need to meet them. and you can't just do 100% virtual. But I think it's a great start to get moving, and the barrier to entry there is very less. So you can just you're sitting in your sofa and you can get unstuck. As simple as that.
So Jerome had a follow-up question, and he asks, what makes you two tick together? What do you appreciate in the other? Beyond the fact that you dress very well and you pick out very, would you say, climate-appropriate sweaters?
I don't know.
That's true, fashion.
Yeah.
I think you asked a similar question in the podcast recording a while back.
Yeah, we did. That's right.
I played it on the back for an hour, which was fun.
Has anything changed since that podcast recording? I think I probably want to ask. Has it gotten better? Has it gotten worse? Are you harboring anything?
No, I think it's really good. I think it's a lot of fun. So we'll be appreciating each other. I think one thing that I said in the podcast as well is Rakesh, if you're looking for facilitators of any kind, there's no one I've met who's more able to jump in and basically put out a fire than Rakesh. Any situation, doesn't matter how stuck it is, how
I can relate to that.
Firefighter.
And he just gets stuff done as well. So there's a nice synergy with that. Whereas I think we were talking about this before. I'm someone who needs to sit back and sort out strategy a bit more before I go forward. So we actually have a nice dynamic where he's up and like, let's go, and I'm like, okay, but just this direction, and then it's okay.
No, that's something that I really need, because I'm like Acme Corporation. I'm like, bam, I'm just going all over the place. But Matt's always asking the right questions, and he's like sort of reining me in to say, okay, but you know what? Why should we really be doing this? And what if it goes in this direction? So that's really awesome. And in that sense, we really complement each other.
So an anonymous question came through and said, is there pricing on the website for the Life Sprint?
Anonymous, does that mean that it comes from you, Robert?
No, it's in the Q&A. It says anonymous attendee. They don't want to know.
No, that's a great question. So tying into what we're saying around this first 100, at the moment we're basically trying to refine it. So we've got online, if you sign up for the 3 sprints this month, it's pay what you want or pay what you think it's worth, and also give us feedback about how much you think it's worth. Basically, after November, so after we've done the sprints with GVDS, we're going to be adding pricing. So this has been very much like we're trying to get everyone involved. We're trying to get as much feedback as possible, and then we're going to kind of, once we're sure that our product actually works and we can really back it up, that's when we're going to add pricing.
Yeah, and I think I followed the same path with the GVDS. I didn't start out with the idea of any type of monetization. It just came down to a simple idea that was like scratching my own itch back in October of last year. And every time I experimented, it went beyond what I had ever thought it was going to be. And, after having 300 people in April, I kind of had to think, okay, is this a really expensive hobby, or is this something that I could actually like tell my existing clients that I'm going to be off for 2 months while I kind of handle this? So
we always talk about that. Like, how does Rob manage this? He's like a multitasking superstar. How does he do that?
I imagine you've got another room with 5 computers, so you just jump in between.
So if you're a believer in Clifton's strengths, one of my top 5 strengths is arranger, and the other one is analytical. Ooh. So I have a pretty big pool of how I can arrange things and analyze things. I mean, I know it from like a objective view, it may seem like completely like, what the hell? Is there like multiple people working around? And it's like, no, this is all me. But I do know now over time when I have to kind of put some sandbox times around it, because if I overstretch, then something like what happened in April happens, where I can't be there for every single occurrence. And after that experience, I was like, okay, I've learned that lesson before. Now it's making sure I can say, well, I can do this, but it's going to take some time, and just set that expectation. So maybe and probably someday when the Life Sprint, when you have over 300 people like signed up for this thing, and you're trying to figure out like how you're going to manage everything beyond bringing in some new people, you can go, hey, Robert, why don't you come over here and handle registration? I'll be like, certainly. How many people you got? And I'll just
come to the arranger.
Yeah, already saying we wanted that, right?
Yeah,
just signed.
Exactly. It's like the equalizer. It's like Robert the arranger. You're gonna have Denzel playing you one fine day.
I mean, here's the crazy thing. last night I knew that I had a doodle poll about all the sessions we're doing next week to figure out challenges. And I knew that I had looked at that data in 24 hours, and it was 1 a.m. and I thought, I just want to know what people did. And I literally, I would like, I'm set to go to bed. I just couldn't do it. So I went in, I actually went to the mural and put little D's over the people's names that actually went in and did the mural that like they were supposed to. So that's the demon inside my head. It's like, I just need to organize something, but
Wow.
that's okay. I still got plenty of rest.
Okay, that's amazing. That's really the best part then. And yeah, we totally need something like that.
Yes. Well, we can talk later. So I think you answered the question about the long-term goal of the life sprint, correct? That was from Sandy Lamb, by the way.
Yeah.
And how do you follow participants after the life sprint is done? Although she misspelled and called it a lift sprint.
Yeah.
Maybe that could be for depression. You have to lift people up and kind of like, look, it's not that bad, relatively, you know.
No, we have a lot of ideas actually.
Life sports, that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I mean, long term, we definitely see it becoming its own entity. It's a product. It's standalone, and in some way, it's just continuing to exist in the long term. That's definitely very clear for us. But there are different forms there. So yeah, I think one idea that we had was to really imagine, could it be something like a fitness studio where you sign up and you actually pay more if you don't get your actions done, but you pay lesser if you actually convert your actions. So that's an idea that we're actually playing with too.
I think and I sense this from the both of you, I think as long as you keep the conversation open, that you'll be receptive to the idea that the market is telling you something that may be a little bit different than what you originally had kind of proposed through your hypothesis, but that you can adjust accordingly if there's either opportunity or there's you see a parallel with where you want to take things. So that's what's really interesting, because the people that have gone through it, I mean, they're not suddenly going thanks and leaving. Some people are kind of like going, yeah, this has some legs. So yeah, kind of see where that goes after a while.
And I think like in the same way that you went, Robert, where it's like when people from all around are super excited about it, it's like, well, how can we do this together? How can it actually grow globally and actually use the incredible talents of all the people who get excited about it to actually implement it elsewhere? So,
yeah.
And what we're doing is just putting our ears to the ground. We want to listen to what people are telling us. And in this aspect, we're also seeing, for example, the importance of something like problem framing that's coming up, you know, in the main sprints. Like you have John and Dana who are specializing in problem framing at the Design Sprint Academy, or there's even Jay Meloni who's doing a great job with that. So we're starting to see aspects of that. How do we really frame these problems so well? This is one thing we're looking at, for example.
Yeah, and in a way, it's almost could be a variation on the problem framing aspect, because it's kind of a normalizing of understanding perspective. But maybe it's just a different approach. Whereas you're talking about a subjective audience around a product or a service or something that people could consume or interact with, you're really talking about someone who is interacting with somebody that's of a very personal nature. So the problem framing could, maybe it's not, the problem's the wrong word to use. It could be something where it's like rut framing or situation framing, or something where it's like, okay, let's kind of take a stock of what is the current situation, what's been the historical narrative, what are the dynamics around, you know, like how you feel, and what kind of elements kind of influence things, and really get a complete picture of all of the social, psychographic, economic dynamics that play into decision-making processes and everything else. So the spectrum is a little bit wider, but you can do that because the information and the sharing will be of such a personal and intimate nature that it can open the door for a lot of getting unstuck, provided what someone decides to share with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, that's why it's really compelling, because there's so many different aspects of human mental health with this, of long-term planning and longevity, there's a lot there. So that's kind of why when I saw that, I thought you do the initial and then when you listen to it and know the people behind it, you're kind of like, no, wait a minute. That's that turning point where it's like, I'm going to track this a little bit. So for me, that's why it's exciting, because I see it evolving to something really interesting.
Yeah, and for us, I think we're super happy when we just share it and people get it instantly, and it's something that they can relate to, or they reflect back to their own lives, and they're like, hey, yeah, I totally see how this works, or I could need it, and that's really gratifying.
Yeah, it's at its nascent stage, but if it continues to gain traction, you've both shown interest. You put an incredible amount of work in probably and see where it goes. I think it would be pretty interesting. Personally, I'm a little biased, but that's okay. I can promote it. It's just simply because we're talking. It's like, I'm telling you, all of these, and again, it falls back to when you can actually do it between now and December. If you're watching, you have no excuse. You should at least give it a shot.
Hashtag no excuse.
No excuse. Hey, you can adopt that one. Okay, so we had another question come in and says, how can you bring emotional engagement between a group of strangers in a remote situation as good as it was in the same place?
Because we touched on that a little, right, with the difficulty of online versus in person. I think, yeah, it's tough. I think I'm pretty happy with how we're doing it at the moment. We can always get better, but it's funny dynamics that humans develop. I think the first thing that we had to do was obviously say everyone puts on a camera. That was like sometimes people are a little bit like, oh no, it's a bit messy in the room, but like once people start to, and this is the beauty of once people start sharing and actually being able to realize that there's safety, that nothing that goes on will get shared. And that actually other people are interested and are willing to help with their problems, but they're also anonymous enough, like they're friendly and familiar, but anonymous enough that they're not like the best friend. And so actually by about session 2 and session 3, there's this really, really nice kind of camaraderie between people where everyone's able to say, Rob, you said this is a challenge for you. It's a challenge for me. And actually I read this book and it really helped me. So maybe that's an idea. And so it's actually surprisingly really cool.
And I think we also have, like, I can quote the example of an exercise that we do where people identify the barriers and help us. And they see that they're not very different from each other, although the problems are very different. And there's a very beautiful connection that happens there when you see that, okay, I'm not alone with my own barriers or obstacles. And there's other people who feel the same. And all it takes is to flip it over and see if it can become maybe a creative question that you go and find answers to. So this goes a long way in really breaking down whatever problem you have and to say, okay, I'm not alone. There's other people who feel the same, and I can actually get this done.
Yeah.
Now, in the presentation, you spoke of particular exercises that you walk through, like a 3-stage process to kind of work through things. If you were to project out, maybe even 3 months from now, in terms of how this would evolve based on your initial work that you've done, where do you see room for kind of expanding upon particular exercises, or what are some initial ideas that you two have had around kind of either optimizing certain exercises or adding in some new ones?
Yeah, we talk about that every day.
Yeah. So I guess like the first one, which ties into another question, which I think you asked, but maybe we didn't answer, which is like the follow-up thing.
Oh yeah.
This is the thing that I'm most excited about at the moment, is seeing how much we can really push, especially with the 3 weeks after. So we know that at the end of week 1, people go away with a really clear goal that's kind of very tangible, as to be achieved by the end of that month. But right now we're tweaking with ways that you can really keep that group rolling. So we're basically going to have, when you sign up for those next 3 weeks, you've got 3 weeks where we're in the chat. You can post anything you want, open questions if you get stuck on something, or just kind of like, hey, I did this, it's so exciting. So we're kind of at the moment playing around with that. That's kind of what I'm most excited about.
No, that's really super crucial. And for me, I'm really excited about the problem framing bit and how to really get the user experience right. So if you ask me in the next 3 months, we really have a very good idea of what's the best user experience that we can offer. And this has come from all the sprints that we've done, and people are able to go through it very smoothly.
Okay. Do you foresee potentially in the future, like partnerships with other companies or other people that are in the space around professional development and life coaching? And if you did, what, at least initially, what would you think would be some really interesting scenarios to explore?
Good question.
By the way, can you hear the party music going on behind us, or is that? Okay.
I'm sorry?
Can you hear the party music that's going on behind us?
No, not at all.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah,
Not bad. Yeah.
It's not for us, but it's all right. Friday night now.
Now I'm going to have that in my head the entire time. It's like, where's it?
So the question was partnerships. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, at the moment, we're just talking to as many people as we can that are in the space because everyone they speak to is super excited about it. So obviously, not just design sprints, but the Designing Your Life guys that came out of Stanford are a huge inspiration for a lot of the stuff that we do. And there's some really cool people who've got accreditation with that. There's obviously like a lot of life coaches that we know who do really cool stuff, and facilitators, a lot of people who are also involved in this stuff. So for us on that level, I guess, like, yeah, I think it's super exciting for that might end up.
Do you have any particular genre you would like to pursue? For example, I know people that are individual one-on-one coaches where they're like I mentioned Clifton Strengths. I know of one that basically like swims in that pond a lot. There's other that do executive recruit or executive kind of coaching around, emotional intelligence and being able to present and speak in a particular way so that they say a lot with less words. There's also people on the other side of the spectrum that are that struggle with mental health, and they use as many free services as possible to kind of anchor themselves in an appropriate spot. Do you see some of those partnerships happening with individuals, or do you think that both of you are more aligned with organizations, or is there no preference whatsoever?
I think we need them all. We really.
I think there's
It's a wide open door. You got ice cream and root beer floats, and everyone's just going to kind of say, "Come on in and talk to us."
Yeah. I mean, so we actually just agreed to do a project with a business school here in Berlin a couple of days ago. And so that's a super exciting one. We're really going to knuckle down and explore that kind of entry into career side. And so they're really cool. I'm really excited about developing, I guess, that further as well. So I think it's definitely both sides. The ones that you mentioned, like particularly coaches and particularly ones that are really good in specific spaces, I'd certainly see really cool partnerships where if we could be kind of the entry point to people who don't really know what services exist. Maybe people never thought about doing coaching before, but they'll take a life sprint because it seems a bit simpler. And through that, they go, you know what would really help me? A coach. And so looking at ways that we can actually channel two services, this is the entry point.
I mean, there's one scenario I can think of where you have the live sprinters who've gone through the initial sessions, and then they're able to address maybe multiple topics, all the topics that you spoke about, Robert. Like maybe there's someone they can write to or talk to when it comes to mental health. There's someone else who's supporting them with career decisions, stuff like that. So that's a very beautiful scenario to have, like a roster, like your own Avengers team of coaches, right? So that's really beautiful.
And very much, I guess, within that, trying to make clear that we're not trying to do that as well. Yeah. I think that's also very important.
That's very clear. But having said that, we also feel that the standard coaching or therapy processes take time. And one of the things that we really also want to explore, this is a little bit more long term, how can there be more rapid transformation? Are there ways or methods in which this can be accelerated? That's another question which is super exciting.
That would fall into line with the idea that the sprint is a condensed, efficient process that kind of saves a lot of people time and money by doing things that normally would take a lot of time into a simple one or less than 1 week time frame. Correct?
And it's planet friendly.
Yeah, stay on your couch too.
Yeah,
true.
Shout out to Jerome again, who's throwing out the comments, and especially because I noticed Sabrina gave a really good comment about your workshop, Jerome, saying that it was zen refreshing. So congrats, Jerome, on that one. Well done.
That's the talent sprint. I'm slated to kind of hang out and check them out as well today. But they're doing some pilots all throughout this month, so they're really making it happen.
And talking of partnerships, that's a partnership we'd be super excited about. And I think we go hand in hand also, like the life sprint and the talent sprint. It's really like two steps that go very closely with each other.
Or two different doors that you could open. It's like, do you feel okay about yourself, yet you want to kind of map out your career and get on a new learning curve, or show people what you can do? Or are you kind of treading water at your job with the real underlying reason why you're kind of not able to be singled out for promotion, or feel like you have imposter syndrome? What's the underlying form for that? Well, you go to door number 2 on the other side and kind of go through that. So again, we were just talking about partnerships, or kind of like finding where you can learn from one another, or find the right connection. I mean, there seems to be one right there.
Yeah. We've got a great question from Christia. Thank you, by the way. Where she said, is the focus currently rapid transformation or permanent sustainable transformation? Which is a great question. That I would say our response to that is that it's kind of both, but neither. So what we're about is actually just like finding a way to. What's that?
It's Christian.
Christian. Oh, okay, sorry. In the panel, it got cut off. So.
I'm sure they appreciate the name one way or another. They'll troll you a little bit if they feel like it would provide some humor. But go, please answer the question.
No, it's actually just about like chunking things. So often like problems can be so complex and you have no idea how to start. And so this is about reframing that and finding something really small to do right now in the next month that gets you somewhat further. So that's what it's about. So therefore it can be rapid transformation, but we're not saying like complete transformation. It's about unlocking that thing, that barrier that may unlock so much more. And in terms of more permanent, sustainable transformation, it's ideally teaching some tools or way of going about recognizing, having the self-awareness to know you're stuck and go, well, I don't need to stay in this situation forever. There are ways that I can actually get through that quicker. So I guess, hope that answers the question.
If anybody wanted to volunteer their time to kind of help you out with what you're doing with the life sprint, what are some things right off the bat where you need the most assistance around like organization or doing things like that? So there are people that have some spare hours just to kind of throw your way, and because they would like to be more involved with it. But what are some engagements that you could offer for people that want to be able to volunteer their time with you?
So we definitely need advisors who could who've done some similar work in the digital space and who know the digital space very well and can sort of give us a little bit of direction to say, hey guys, this is where you should be moving towards, sort of stuff like that. That's something we could definitely use.
We need ourselves to get ourselves unstuck sometimes.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I mean, just like if you guys are genuinely interested, just reaching out and saying, hey, it's always super inspiring. I think on the other side, facilitators in the long run, so kind of in a month, 2 months, we're going to see how we might be able to empower more people to deliver life sprints around the place. So if that's interesting, just reach out. We're super keen to have the chat. So yeah, advice is definitely awesome, but longer term partnerships for sure.
And Christian had a follow-up question around, with the people you've helped so far, what are the common causes of their feelings of being stuck?
Yeah.
We've got a nice list of consistent, like a lot of the same ones coming up. It's always actually super interesting how much self-doubt is a big one pops up. Not knowing what your options are.
Or too many options.
Too many options.
That's a really common one. And it's also like, there's another classic one, am I good enough? That's something that comes up a lot. And if you're, there's also like their environments having shaped or molded them in a certain way, which is sort of preventing them from looking at things in a more holistic sense, or looking at things in a different way, to change perspective differently. And I don't know, how do you put that? As this gaining perspective, something like that. That's always been really good, because when people see that, okay, there's someone else who's actually looking at it differently, that just flicks the switch again, and you start believing more in yourself.
Yeah, and if you was just like this classic motivation thing, right, where we might have this idea about, I really want to write more. I want to write a few articles this month, but somehow every month goes by and you can't quite do it. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? But yeah, it's another example of one that hopefully we can help people to actually just do the thing that you're trying to do. Thanks for the questions, Christian.
Yeah.
Great questions. Thanks.
And I was saying, and I've always tried to advocate like going through the motions to really figure out those questions sometimes. Like the writing challenge we did in May, and we're going to do again in December, is for people that either struggle to write or don't know what to write, or they're good at writing, but they kind of want to like sharpen up their message. There's all sorts of situations, but I left it open-ended when I started doing it, saying, look, we're just going to go through the process and I'll give you some of the things that I've learned, and then we can exchange some information that way. Sometimes being open-ended is enough of an invitation where there's no judgment and people feel like a bit more confident, or at least, they feel safe to kind of come in and say like, look, you don't have to publish what you write, just go through the motions. It's like getting reps, like it's like playing basketball. You got to shoot more to be able to really be able to score more, so to speak.
Each work the muscle, use it.
That's exactly it. That's the whole philosophy. And it's the same thing with the GVDS. Start doing virtual sprints. The more you do them, the easier they're going to be. You're going to know the territory, the software, the people, the rhythm, the whole shot. Just ask Sandy Lamb. That was kind of set her off. She said, "Oh, this is interesting." Then she did 4 more. I mean, that's an outlier case, but that's an example of anyone who wants to learn something new, just putting in the time.
And I think adding to that, I think a lot of what you've created now goes back also to the GVDS, because if I hadn't discovered it, I think in its last iteration, we wouldn't have got the exposure to all these different things. And I think there's definitely a seed that comes from there. So super cool stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if it wasn't for that event, I wouldn't have known who you were, and I wouldn't have gotten the impression from other people about what you do. And knowing your history, where you are with the Life Sprint now, how that's kind of fed into that, and how your narrative around helping people and basically seeing things from different perspectives and being open to experimentation has kind of led you to this space. So it's, for me, look from the outside looking in, it's always infinitely interesting because it's not me, but it's interesting to see how you navigate the journey from like the nascent start of an idea and the concept and how it eventually ends. And when it does end, does it morph into something slightly different? Like you've hit the run with this. Now it's like, okay, I think I kind of want to do this based on my experience and learnings from the previous one, whether it succeeded or failed. To me, that's what's really compelling.
That's awesome. Man, you're doing an amazing job. So,
well, sir, you are doing an amazing job. Come on now.
We should keep this once a month now. This pat on the back. This month,
every month,
next month too. Let's do it again.
Yes, this is reaffirmation of purpose. We can do this every month.
Yeah.
This will be like the kickoff to every Life Sprint in the beginning of the month.
We need to get some of the people listening to be involved so they can feel the love as well. Yeah. Christian, great question. Sharon left.
Yes.
Who's a star?
Sabrina,
also gone, but she was great.
I just say, let's just bring Christian on every time we do something like this, because that way he'll have ask the really thoughtful, insightful questions.
Really great questions.
Yeah. We don't have. We'll just say like, okay, we have our panelists of questions. People ask us questions.
Yeah.
We'll give you some updates, but really we're relying on them because we're gonna have 40 minutes of dead air, just kind of going. So, where do you get your sweaters from? Do you tend to go like? Do you tend to get them from Amazon?
Sorry, we can't reveal that. It's a national secret. I mean, classified.
But that looks like cashmere, by the way. That looks like really thin cashmere. Yes.
I don't mind fall because it gets to get the turtlenecks out. It was a bit of fun.
Yes, it's stylish. It works. So we have a few minutes left. Do either of you gentlemen want to reiterate some of the actual dates of the Life Sprint and how to sign up for those so people know exactly when they are?
Yeah, the quickest way is to go to lifesprint.me, and we have the next 3 dates on it for October, and you can sign up pretty quick. If you do that, pick your date, pick your starting date. There are 3 sessions. So be mindful about, there's 3 sessions. You need to do all 3 sessions. That's the most beneficial.
Yes. 21st, 23rd, and 25th of October. there's a morning and an evening session, correct? Are they linked, or is it like all three sessions have to be done in the same
Well,
morning?
just for different time zones, so that people from different time zones could use both.
Okay.
So
But the morning session will meet every morning at 9 o'clock, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then the evening session will meet every day at 5 o'clock for CET, which is I should clarify. This is
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, Berlin time, European time.
Okay, yeah. Because if you try to do it from the state side and connect to these things, then you're gonna be disappointed.
No, it's totally fine. We're trying to figure out what time zones to work. So we're still playing with that. So if anyone also is like, yeah, you got to do one this time and this time zone, also let us know, because we're trying to like play around that.
I mean, that's what we wanted to do for the GVDS. Like, let's see, East Coast, West Coast. Maybe we can do some time zones there.
Yeah. So yeah, if for the evening time where you are, that's our morning time. So that's usually where you can bridge people over here in the States, as well as probably some on the eastern side. Though Alaska, they're lost. They're -8 on the GMT, and maybe the morning is their evening. But yeah, kind of.
Any Alaskans in the GVDS groups?
There hasn't been anybody from Alaska yet going to the GVDS. The westernmost part of the United States is the farthest most like time zone for me. And then there's New Zealand and Australia is the other side. So that tends to be the full gamut, where Hong Kong and India and UAE and Australia kind of share somewhat of a band that is manageable. But now that we're getting this, today is by the way, I'll do a little promotion here. This is the last day of registration. So, in regular registration. So but gentlemen, if either of you have registered for this event, you might want to do this in the evening before you retire, because after that, there's still late registration until November 1st, but it's going to be somewhat prohibitively expensive, and that's purposeful, because I'm going to be heads down and trying to support the teams at that point and getting everything together.
Right.
So yeah.
So there you go, guys. Sign up tonight if you haven't already.
Yeah.
You should do it tonight. It's I mean, let's put it this way. It's one of those things where I always advocate that I don't want people to get involved if they don't have the time, and if it's not affordable to them. I would rather they save their money for Christmas, buy their kids gifts, get money for pizza, do all those things that are necessities in life. Mine is like 5th or 6th or 7th kind of consideration. But in the case of a life sprint, if your situation is such where you can't think about Christmas gifts or kids because you're so worried, you're stuck in such a rut, I would say you should probably consider what you're doing towards the end of this month, correct?
Chief Marketing Officer.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I tried. I mean, it was all the time. So, okay. So so if either one, so I'll kind of fill in the blanks a little bit. So both of you are on LinkedIn. Rakesh, you have a company website called SprintDoctor.io if they want to learn more about you and your history. Yeah. There is I think in your presentation that I'll link to later on, I'll include it. The website I had before was lifesprint.me. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
They can go there for all the information. And again, will they get pricing, or is this something that after a few iterations and a few kind of walkthroughs that you're going to kind of get a little bit more comfortable around what the price
So
is?
for the rest of this month and for GVDS, it's pay what you want. So it's whatever you think it's worth, go for it. And then after that, so in a couple of months, we're going to look at the price.
Okay, so
they're already getting tickets. So
okay. GVDS is not anything extra.
Yeah, you get a free ride with that. So
yeah.
There you go, more or less beyond your time. Okay, gentlemen. Any last words? Anything you'd like to say before we part?
Can we lock in next month's therapy session?
I'll tell you what. Hey, how about let's play with this a little bit. Let's say that we're going to do an alumni call with everyone that basically has done the life sprint, and we'll do it towards the end of the GVDS. So we usually do retrospectives, but I think right before the holidays here in the States, we can make it optional. So we can do one right before the holidays, and then we can do one maybe in December. And I can volunteer and be the MC of it,
Nice.
where I could basically do the registration, have people ask front load questions if they like, and just kind of do a touch base with it and establish some norms around how they can give you updates in the future. And I think that those 2 touch points, maybe that can provide the impetus for how that longer term engagement with the people that took the life sprint and what makes sense to kind of do.
As long as there's some more of this, where we can tell each other how great we are.
No. I don't think it'll be that way, Matt. I think what we're going to be doing is putting the focus on the people that have taken the life sprint, and we tell them how good they are.
Perfect.
Yes.
Share that love.
Yeah.
I'm in.
All in.
Open ears, open heart, figure out what they're talking about, understand, empathize, and move forward together.
Yep. Up for it. Doesn't get any better. Yep.
Trademark life sprint. There you go. All right, gentlemen, we're at time. Thank you so much for this session. I really do appreciate you both coming on.
Thank you.
I'll put all the links up later on for people to consume. Everyone who is in Zoom registering and on YouTube who's been watching the live broadcast, thank you so much for tuning in. Have everyone, including us, as well as the listening audience and watching audience, have yourself a wonderful weekend. And Matt and Rakesh, I will talk to you both later on very soon.
Sure. Thanks, everyone. And thanks a lot for the awesome questions. Reach out to us if you have any questions, always around here. Okay?
Cool.
Have a nice weekend.
Bye. See you later.
Bye.